Welcome to another episode of Bright-Headed Publishing Podiobook Book Club. I am your host, Kelly Morgan. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Alicia Rasley. Alicia is a writing coach. She's an author, but first and foremost, she's a coach. She can help with character, plot design. She can help with character point of views, things that you may not think about as you're crafting that next great novel. Just like a good athlete needs a coach, so does a good writer. I'm so glad that she's decided to be a member of the book club. Welcome to the book club, our newest member, writing coach, Alicia Rasley. Alicia, thank you so much for being on the podcast, being the newest member of the book club. I'm so happy that you are here today. How are you?
I'm fine. I just had a new grandchild, our first grandchild.
Congratulations. That is so exciting.
It just corresponded with getting the vaccines. And so we hopped on a plane and went out to Los Angeles. And he, even in the 2 weeks we were there, he just seemed to grow and grow and grow. And well,
congratulations. I'm glad that you actually got to get on a plane and go see him. And that's very exciting for you. So congratulations. You know, Alicia, so I'm here. I'm so glad that you're here. You know, usually on the podcast, I have authors come on. They're on promoting their book, talking about their writing journey, how they became writers, all that good stuff, which is all, I think, incredibly important and valuable to share your experience as a writer. But you are a writing coach. So tell me, how does one become a writing coach?
I think with me, part of it is I'm a writing coach at a university, and that you just get the job. But as a writing coach, I worked for years as a writer. I always was in touch with other writers. I was in critique groups. I belonged to the Romance Writers of America and other writing groups. And so I always was in touch with writers. And, you know, we romance writers were like the first writers to get online, basically, and the science fiction writers. And so we always had real tight groups and a lot of back and forth, a lot of support. And so over the course of the years, as I was encountering my own writing issues and, you know, tackling topics and, you know, immersing myself in research in that, I had friends and colleagues who were experiencing the same sorts of problems or even other problems. And we saw ourselves as sort of the old vets after a while, especially because we were so early to get online, like in 1992, most of us were online. And so we saw ourselves as kind of being able to be mentors to younger writers. And so pretty much I'm doing a lot of mentoring, a lot of editing. I've been an acquiring editor and also a freelance editor. And so I've worked with a lot of writers, and I just am coming up with a lot of understanding of the problems, psychological, emotional, life problems, but also just plain old plotting and character problems that writers encounter. And I don't have all the answers, but I do have some answers, and I like to help out if I can kind of smooth the way or say, you are not crazy, or, oh yeah, I had that problem and here's what I did, and see if it works for you. If I could make it easier for other writers, that's what I want to do. I enjoy talking about writing. I enjoy talking about the creative process. And, you know, there's no one as interesting as writers. And probably no one in the world but other writers believe that. But we secretly think we're pretty interesting together, don't we?
We do. So, you know, tell me how you think how do you know when you need a writing coach, right? Most writers that I have spoke with, you know, feel like they have their own process to get that book out there. And sometimes they really struggle. I know sometimes I do. And you think you have to maybe go at it on your own, but how do you apply a coach into like your writing rhythm? How do you do that?
I think that first, I don't want to say that writing coaches or writing teachers or anything are therapists, but you know how it is with when do you need a therapist? When do you need a counselor? When do you need some extra help? And I think it's very similar to that. And often we try to tough it out, whatever it is. If we're having, I am going to bull ahead with this completely intricate, complicated mystery plot, even though I've never written one before, and I bit off far more than I can chew, and I know it, and I'm afraid I'm just going to spend a year trying to write this, and it's going to be a big failure. But no, I don't need any help. And that's a real typical thing, I think, that there's a lot of pride, do it yourself. And, but I think that I personally have the idea that, I know I personally would not have been successful at writing, and I wouldn't know as much about writing as I do now if I hadn't joined groups and connected with other writers and talk to editors a lot in depth and ask specific questions. I think that we just, to some degree, we need to overcome the idea that we're all alone, that writing is a solitary process, that creativity is damaged by collaboration or reaching out. And, for some people, I will say, yeah, they do it better on their own. But if you're not that person in the rest of your life, if you're someone who is good at being in a team, good at collaborating, able to ask for help, that maybe you don't need to do this on your own. Maybe, after all, our work is aimed at readers. Our work is aimed at an audience. And one thing a writing editor or coach could be is your first audience. And but also a very informed audience, someone who knows how to fix things, knows how to get around problems, and and maybe has some strategies to try out. And so I think that it's an American thing to say, oh, I want to do this on my own, but it's also an American thing to reach out a hand and to take that hand. That we're not just individualists, we're also community oriented. And I guess I feel like if it's not working, if something's not working, how long are you going to bang your head against that brick wall? And when it starts to hurt too much, maybe it's time to try another way. And there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in taking help. There's no shame in sharing your experience with other people and asking them, other writers, to share their experience with you. I think a writing coach obviously is not, is going to be doing that on a level that's maybe more directed and focused, especially focused on you as the writer, your problems, not, just sharing problems. But basically, we're all in this together. And I think that that I've been so gifted really with friendships and alliances and collaborations in my writing career that I don't know why anybody would want to go it alone. This is fun. This is, the agony of writing.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know why anybody would want to go it alone if you don't have to go it alone.
And it's so much fun to work with other people.
I would agree. And get their perspective too. Sometimes they can help you see things that you're just unable to see because you're so close to your work.
I know. I find that even now, and I'm fairly objective about my own work, but there are times when I have to just stand back. I had a book a few years ago. It was a mystery novel, and I have always read mystery novels, but I'd never written one before. But I thought, at this point, I thought I could write anything. A physics textbook, I can do that, can't I? Got a little ahead of myself. But and so the book sold to the editor or the publisher I had been working with on another book. But I had the idea that they didn't really like it that much, and that it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be as a book. And but I couldn't tell. I was too close to it. I couldn't tell what was working, what wasn't working. And so a friend of mine, Lynn Coddington, I'll say her name here, she's like the best reader in the world. She sat down with the book. She went through it, and the publisher had said that there weren't enough clues. There was too much reliance on instinct. The detective was relying too much on instinct, and the reader needed more clues. And so Lynn sat down and read it, and she said, okay, on page 141, do this. And we know each other well enough that, she knew I wouldn't take offense at basically being commanded what to do. And I knew that I could trust that even if I didn't see it right away, what she said was going to work. And she would literally tell me what page to put this on, and just to insert these clues. And it made all the difference. It was sort of amazing. After that, I thought, why am I so proud? Why would I think that I couldn't learn from someone else? After that experience, I'm really reminded all the time that other writers add to your experience and your understanding and your wisdom. They don't take it away.
That is true. That I like that. So are you working with people that write in all genres, or are you finding yourself that you're really sticking to a certain genre?
I work with writers of all genres. I don't work with a lot of nonfiction writers. Although I've written a lot of nonfiction. I could do it. But that just, who calls me. I think I work mostly with people with commercial fiction, but I have worked with a couple lately of really highly speculative fiction and experimental narratively, which is interesting for me because I'm in the genres, so I'm fairly classical in my understanding of plotting and characterization. So it's been a stretch, but what I need to do is to say, this is not my vision. My job is to help that writer achieve their vision. And their vision is they want multiple timelines, or they want a complicated juxtaposition of a collage effect and things, and something like that. And how can I help them do that, achieve what they want? Because when you're narratively experimental, I personally feel you still need some grounding. You have to put something in there that the reader can grab onto, and that no matter how crazy everything else seems, they have some anchor that they can hold on to, and they can understand from that. They can hold on to that and then enjoy the rest of the ride, which might be more complicated. And so I think I'm pretty good, even with experimental, of determining, what is it that you want to achieve, and how can you achieve that without completely and utterly losing the reader. I found part of it is because, when you're 17 years old, boy, you could be so experimental in your reading that's when we all read all that crazy stuff and the things with the experimental narratives, and half of it was in postcards and that kind of thing now, and text talk and things. But, for older readers, I think they are less, flexible, and they need to hang on to things more. And I like to think I can provide the perspective of, if your reader is not as experimental as you are, how can you also have something in this book that they can hold on to and enjoy?
So let me ask you a question. When you are working with writers, do you have a process to work with somebody who says, hey, I'm not the type of writer who maps stuff out. I sit down in front of my keyboard or whatever, and I start to type in, and that's how the story comes. Versus you do work with somebody who does like to plot everything out and have an outline. Do you find the process different when you're working with different styles of writers?
I think that, I shouldn't generalize, but basically there are two phases to writing. One is outlining or plotting, and one is drafting. for most of us to make a book that's coherent and interesting and dramatic, we have to do both. We just don't have to do them in the same order. And so the pantser writers, the people who write by the seat of their pants, they write out a first draft. Like, I don't know if you do NaNoWriMo in November, where you try to write 50,000 words of a novel in November. Okay, that, if you can do that, that's great. That's wonderful. But you still have to outline the book. I think afterwards, if you want to make this book make sense, you have to go through and what do I have? What could be better rearranged? What did I drop the ball with? What did I over-dramatize and what did I under-dramatize? What is going to confuse the reader? Where did I go off on digressions? At some point, you have to look at what the book is and what the plot is and how the characters are developed and make sure that it makes sense. And so I can work with people to outline first. I can work with people who don't outline at all because I'll help them outline. And I can work with people who have a first draft or a second, they're on their third draft and they've never outlined. What I think I like to do is ask questions to get an idea of what they want this book to be. What's their vision of the story? And I find most people who don't outline ahead of time, they're really into developing the characters as they write. And so I like to then have most of my questions to be about the character and the character's journey and things like that. So I help with, I try to help by asking questions and then coming back with ideas to better achieve that, whatever they want for the character. And then at some point, I do probably try to get them to think about plot and getting things in the right order and all that kind of more structural stuff.
So are you helping writers? If somebody came to you and said, hey, Alicia, I have this idea for a book. I haven't actually written anything yet because I don't know what to do. Can you help me?
Well, I have a big plotting course where no matter where you are, I think probably could work through this course. It's 3 acts and 9 turning points, and then 3 aspects of character development. And if you work through all that, I think that's helpful. But basically, I know, sometimes all you have is the idea, and how do you develop it? And I think if all you have is an idea and you have that you have 2 options, and I can help with either one, but basically the option is to let inspiration guide you, and you write a whole bunch of scenes, you write, a whole bunch of pages without trying to stop yourself or trying to make yourself fit some kind of guidelines or structure. Or you decide, I'm going to figure out what's going to happen in this plot, and then I'm going to start drafting. Either way is probably fine. It has more to do with, who you are. But I think if you just have an idea, that it does help to talk through it and sort of scout ahead. Well, where do I want to end up? Or what is most important about this book to me? Or what in this story idea am I really enthralled with? And we all start with ideas. That's all most of us have at the very beginning. And so the thing is to take that from the idea and to make it into a story requires at first either drafting a lot so you really get to know your voice, you really get to know the characters, or plotting ahead of time. And either way is a good way. It kind of depends on temperament.
Yeah, I'm not an outliner until after I've written it.
I personally, I'm not going to say that something's better than another, but I think that that's probably the most sensible way to do it, frankly.
Yeah, I have to write it first, and then I can go back and kind of draft and outline that way. That's just how my brain works.
Well, so, I like the idea of you getting to know your voice in this story, and you can only do that by writing. You can't do that by outlining.
Yeah, that is true. So you talked about, the classes that you teach to help people. So tell me about that. Describe to me the types of classes that you would offer somebody who's maybe thinking, maybe I do need a writing coach, but I have no idea of what that really means. Like, what classes do you offer? And maybe is it like a la carte where people can pick and choose where they think they need help?
I'm just finishing up a second big class that's plotting the 3-act way and building bolder scenes. And so you have plot, big picture, and scenes, the smaller picture. And these are big things that take you all the way through the process, that they take you from the structure into to the very bottom sentences. But I also, I think with me, I go into more depth than perhaps a lot of writers want, which is why I try to keep the structure very clear, so that if they don't want to go into that much depth, they still get something out of it. And I also do a lot of email classes for writing groups and workshops going. I've got Sisters in Crime, which is the mystery novelists group. I'm doing a workshop for them on Zoom next week. And that's the sort of thing that, I think that I've done a lot of work on plot and character because that's mostly what I teach, but I've also, I decided I wanted to do something on voice, because everybody acts like you should know what your voice is, but no, very few people actually know what that is. And I think, if we were singers, we wouldn't expect ourselves just to be able to have a voice and understand it completely and know how to use it and know how to breathe in the right way. We as writers, why do we think that we ought to be able to conquer our own voice right away? I think our voice is something we find and then we refine. And so I made a long course in finding and refining your voice, which is I try to make these things very practical, even if they're sort of conceptual like that. What are the ways you can discover your own voice, and what are the ways that you can refine that in the most practical ways. So I like to try to keep things as a working writer myself. I also, because I'm an English teacher, I also have done literary analysis and all that, and I love that stuff, but that's not what writers need. Writers need much more practical, I think usually. Most writers need practical ideas and strategies. How do I figure out how to make my dialogue more exciting? How can I hint at something without actually revealing it? How can I create suspense in this scene? And there is real specific strategies that, writers like Stephen King, they know how to do that. And so I try to find those as much in my reading as in my writing. I analyze authors to find that, but also in my own writing, things that I've done myself. How do you hide a clue? How do you tantalize the audience without annoying them? How do you create a comic scene? And so that's the sort of thing that I think can be taught. And I think that I've been a teacher for a long time, but I think these things can be taught. They're not things that you were born knowing, or that just you decided to become a writer and suddenly all this occurs to you. These are fairly practical tools that you can learn and you can apply them right away. And so while I have a real consciousness of the mysticism and the exoticism of creativity, I also think, there's basically a top 10 rules to almost anything in life.
It's funny that you say that, because I think writing, there are parts of writing that you're right, that can be taught. But at the end of the day, you just have to want to write and enjoy writing to really make writing, I think, fun and enjoyable if you like creating characters. Have you ever told anybody that maybe this is not the thing for them? That maybe writing just isn't for them?
No, I never want to be the reason someone quits writing. I'm a college teacher, and I never want to be the reason that a student drops out of college. And so I think also I've been humbled. I remember I was judging a contest once, and there was a story. I was reading this, and I was thinking, this is never going to sell. This is this just is such a lame idea, and I know she wants to be clever, but it's just not working. And then 3 months later, I pick up Publishers Weekly, and there it is. She got some 6-figure advance for that very book. And I thought, thank God I did not write anything in the critique of that book that says, forget it, don't quit your day job. In fact, get another job, and because she sold. If I had tried to discourage her, first off, she would have laughed at me because she was probably already in contact with an agent. But also, it's not my place. It's not my place to tell someone whether their dream is possible. What do I know? I can tell them, I hope I can tell them how better to get to their dream. But it's not my job to judge, because I don't have any idea how dedicated they are, how quick they are to learn, how inspired they can be. I also don't know, all of us, for most people, there's some books which are not going to be very good. They're not going to be very good, and other books which are going to be amazing. And it's the same author. We've all read book, it's like, boy, his first book was great, and what happened here? And how do I know that the next book this person writes isn't going to be terrific? It's not my job, I guess.
Too, as I think, as just as a writer and somebody who reads, everything that I read is not necessarily my cup of tea, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that the writing isn't good.
That's
right?
really true. And I, as a romance writer, I always had to. I feel like I spent so many years pointing out to men. I'm sorry, men, but men generally don't like romance novels. Okay, it's not meant for you. That doesn't mean that it's bad. And then when I read something action adventure, SEAL Team 6 kinds of things, I got to remind myself, I don't understand this genre. I don't know the conventions. I don't know what the readers want. It's not what I want. That doesn't mean it's not brilliant at what it's doing. So I think we have to retain a certain humility. We're not the judge of it. We're not the end all and be all. And the great Oz who knows everything. We're just not that. We can help each other. We certainly have the right to like or dislike work. I just have been humbled enough to know that I don't have some kind of golden pen that can check off and say this is going to be successful or this isn't going to be successful.
Right. I think most writers know that they need an editor. Mm-hmm. They need maybe somebody to help to design their cover, maybe with the formatting. But I don't think most people think about getting a coach and getting that help, somebody that can help you figure out the plot, like you said, develop the characters, really make your book just that much better by getting that type of feedback and that type of help. I just don't think most people realize it. And that some of these techniques that you were talking about, developing your characters and finding your voice, you're right. These things have to be taught. And so you go out and you learn them and then you apply them to your writing, probably to find out that you're, a better writer because of the tools that you now are using.
Right. We use the big tool of language. And there are other tools too. And I also think that sometimes we have problems with writing process. For example, if you're blocked, everybody is blocked for a different reason. So you could say to me, well, I'm blocked, and I'm say, well, try writing backwards or whatever kind of crazy thing I just read. And in fact, what you need to do is analyze, okay, what is it that made me stop writing? What is it made me lose focus there? And then work back from that. For example, I really think a lot of people try to write in order. And some people write chapter 1 and write chapter 2, and they're great at that. But if you're like me and you spend 2 hours on the first paragraph, that maybe you shouldn't be writing the first paragraph first. What a waste of time. Especially since with me, I'm going to come back and rewrite it anyway. And so I think a writing coach can also help you kind of work with your writing process better. I think that, I just was giving a talk to some high school creative writing students, and one said, what advice would you give? And I said, a young writer, I said, the first thing is, don't show your work to anybody who won't love it. When you're 25, you can get a tough critique group. When you're 15, you need to love your own writing. And you can't be around people who don't support that. And I thought that was, the teacher even said she was kind of surprised at that I said that because we're supposed to, let's be critical of our own thing. There's a point early on, I don't think you should be very self-critical. I think you should glory in how wonderful it is that, words come out of your fingers. And I think that sort of thing, a writing coach also can help with that, can help with these writing process problems, and also give the kind of counseling of, if your husband has never read one of your books, he might be sensible, because what if he decides he doesn't like his book? How are you ever going to sleep with him again?
That is good advice. Didn't even think about that, but that's good advice.
Never again, buddy. Stay out. You don't like my prose style? Well, I don't want you in my bed anymore. It's family is like the worst people to show your book to, because they'll either like it or they won't like it, and either way, it will have nothing to do with the quality of the writing. It'll be much more about the relationship.
That is so true. Alicia, thank you so much for being a part of the book club and being on the podcast. If somebody wanted to reach out and work with you, how would they reach you?
AliciaRasley.com is my website, but you can email me at Raisley@gmail.com. And I'd be glad to talk to anybody. Also, I just want to tell you, I got the rights back to Power of Point of View, which is one of the writing books. I got the rights back, and I have an email or electronic version of it, and I'd be glad if anybody wanted it. I could send you the PDF.
And that is the Power of the Point of View, correct?
Yes, it's about the writing element of point of view, and it's pretty technical, but I like to think it's got some strategies. So,
well, let me tell you something. The first time anybody ever said, "What's your POV?" I had no clue about what they were talking about. Okay, mm-hmm. I now know, but I remember the first time I heard that, I had no idea what they were talking. I didn't even think about that as a writer. I don't know. I'm just writing. I didn't even think about the point of view. So that's very important.
Well, as a reading student, a literature student, we always called it viewpoint. And so I always had to shift back and forth between the two terms. So, well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for being patient with all the technical issues.
No worries. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and being a part of the podcast. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with me here today.
Okay, well, great, good writing, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bright Headed Publishing Audiobook Book Club. I have been your host, Kelly Morgan. Today we spoke with writing coach Alicia Rasley. If you are a writer and you are thinking that you are stuck and you have to do it by yourself, you don't. Just like a good athlete needs a coach, a good writer could use a coach too. All of Alicia's information is in the podcast description. If you're thinking that this may be for you, go check her out. If you or someone you know is a writer and thinks that they would love to be on the podcast, email me, brightheadedpublishing@gmail.com. My goal is to help writers promote their books and promote their craft and hopefully reach a reader for their book. And if I can do that for you, email me. Next week, another writer, a new member to our ever-growing book club. I'm so grateful that you've decided to listen today and that you've decided to join me. Until next time, keep writing.